Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Some sad news coming in from overseas today. A 23-year-old Army sergeant from Billings has died.
The Department of Defense says U.S. Army Sergeant Nathaniel Irish died last Sunday in Iraq in a non-combat related incident.
Now, Irish was a decorated soldier who received 6 medals serving our country.
The Army tells Q2 Irish and his unit were involved in Operation Inherent Resolve, training Iraqi soldiers to fight ISIS overseas. Q2's Mitch Laggy standing by now with more on the Billings born and raised soldier. Mitch.
Russ and Jeanelle, difficult news for a Billings family and friends. A graduate of senior high school, Nathaniel Irish joined the Army in January 2015 and was most recently serving at Fort Wainwright in Alaska. Sergeant Irish was a small arms and artillery repair NCO with the 25th Brigade Support Battalion. His job was to make sure all the weapons used on the battlefield were in top working order. Among his awards, Irish earned 2 Army Commendation Medals, 2 Army Achievement Medals, the Army Good Conduct Medal, and the National Civil Defense Medal. Irish died in a non-combat related incident at Camp Taji in Iraq. The U.S. Army says his death is still under investigation, as fellow service members and his family mourn the loss of someone incredibly close.
Anytime we lose a soldier, whether it's combat, non-combat, whatever the circumstances, it's a huge blow to the unit, to his fellow soldiers, and we know it is the same for the family. You know, I know they're grieving now, and we just want them to know that they have our full condolences and our full support, and we'll do whatever we can to help them through this trying time.
Irish's casket will be brought back to the States at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware tomorrow afternoon. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thank you, Mitch. And today, Montana Governor Steve Bullock sending his condolences in this statement.
It reads in part, Lisa and I are heartbroken over the loss of Sergeant Nathan Irish. As a state and nation, we ask our brave soldiers and their families to sacrifice so much to keep our nation and communities safe.
TC Energy and crews from across North Dakota now responding to an oil spill in the rural part of the state. The oil spill took place in Walsh County near Edinburgh, North Dakota. Crews were first alerted to the spill early this morning. Now, the pipeline that leaked is part of the Keystone Pipeline that was built back in 2010. It starts up in Alberta and runs through the Dakotas, Nebraska, across Kansas and Missouri, and finally into Illinois. According to the Great Forks Herald, the spill has been contained to a wetland but has affected an area where a local farmer cuts hay. The North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality says the spill is about 1,500 feet long by 15 feet wide as of this afternoon. Steps are being taken to contain that spill, but the volume of oil in the area is currently unknown. Officials do say local drinking water has not been affected. TC Energy says it has shut down the pipeline to address the issue.
Well, hundreds of asbestos-related damage claims filed by residents of Libby are at the heart of a case argued today before the Montana Supreme Court. The defendant is BNSF Railroad for its alleged role in spreading contaminated vermiculite waste throughout Libby. MTN's Mike Dennison was at today's hearing.
In January, the state's asbestos claims court rejected BNSF attempts to shield the company from liability for claims by 1,200 people in Libby. The claims say action by the railroad helped spread deadly asbestos fibers through town from vermiculite shipped by rail from the former W.R. Grace mine north of town. On Wednesday, BNSF told the Supreme Court that decision should be overturned. In the words of BNSF attorney Dale Schoengert, the railroad did not mine vermiculite, did not mill it, did not load it into rail cars. It only transported the final product as freight. But attorneys for the plaintiffs told the High Court the case is about more than just the railroad transporting processed vermiculite.
Our case is about the casting of toxic asbestos dust into the community of Libby from the rail yard caused by any disturbance of the dust. That could be the wind. It could be the maintenance activities that the EPA describes. It could be the switching of cars in the rail yard.
Sullivan said hundreds of millions of pounds of asbestos in vermiculite was hauled from the mine into the railroad's yard in downtown Libby. BNSF has invoked several defenses, which it says block liability. It says W.R. Grace is the responsible party, or that federal railroad safety law preempts state law, or that BNSF is a common carrier.
If we're going to say, common carriers, you are legally bound under both state and federal law to carry what is presented to you, it makes no sense to hold that carrier liable, strictly liable, if something goes wrong.
Montana's asbestos claims court rejected those arguments and, as Sullivan put it, cleared the way for the plaintiffs and the railroad to prove whether the railroad's actions cause harm or not.
This goes to the issue of causation, Your Honor, and that's what the asbestos court has appropriately reserved for trial, the issue of causation and the issue of damages.
The 7 justices asked many questions Wednesday and at the close of the hour-long hearing took the case under advisement and will rule later. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Thanks, Mike. Now, Montana's asbestos claims court, created 2 years ago, is overseeing hundreds of cases in state court related to asbestos poisoning from the defunct W.R. Grace vermiculite mine.
Well, after decades of mining and smelter pollution, tonight a federal agency says Anaconda residents are not testing high for exposure to toxic materials. Blood and urine samples taken from 367 residents last year show normal levels of arsenic and lead. However, those who spend a lot of time in confined areas like crawl spaces and attics do have higher levels, and the city plans to address that.
The goal with that is we're going to go into every house in this community and clean it up to standard so there is no arsenic, lead in any part of that house.
The abatement program will be up and running by next March.
One update for you tonight on an MTN investigation about defective turf installed at a Montana high school.
Since our story aired, FieldTurf, a massive international company which did the work, has swooped in to test the safety of that field.
Here's MTN Chief Investigative Reporter Andrea Lutz with results.
The report is known as a GMAX test. It measures the shock absorbance of the field. The results are not very bad, especially for a 10-year-old field. But the company, Firefly Sports Lab, was hired by FieldTurf, and the report doesn't address the actual condition of the defective fibers at Laurel High School. We brought you this story earlier this month when MTN Investigates informed Laurel High School that their 2009 Duraspine synthetic grass field was made with defective fibers. It's the same field that's at the very heart of dozens of lawsuits across the country that claim the field fell apart, even injuring athletes. FieldTurf never disclosed that information to Laurel. FieldTurf said in a statement that the field is in good shape, and Laurel's been told they can have it for another 2 to 3 years. But while in town, FieldTurf also threw a hefty dollar amount back at administration when the field does go, saying FieldTurf can replace it for $450,000. But there was no discussion from the company about why they sold the school a defective field in the first place. FieldTurf says Laurel's 8-year warranty has come and gone. So while Laurel has to think now about an expensive replacement, I'm also learning turf industry experts are questioning the GMAX testing process, saying it's an easy test to pass. Again, FieldTurf paid for the test, meaning they chose the company to find those results. For MTN Investigates, I'm Andrea Lutz.
And Andrea has a copy of that report in this story on our website, KTVQ.com.
Head over to the MTN Investigates tab to see more about what the safety test revealed.
Arguments heard over Governor Steve Bullock's emergency order to ban flavored vaping products today. A Helena district judge must decide whether to issue a preliminary injunction that stops the state from enforcing the emergency ban while the legality is decided. Today, school administrators described the growing problem of underage vaping. And a doctor testified about the negative health effects. 4 vape shop owners also took the stand to testify how their product has helped tobacco users stop using traditional cigarettes. There was also a doctor for the plaintiffs who testified that vaping is valuable in the battle against combustible tobacco. The state says any hold on the emergency ban would do harm to the public.
The people of the state of Montana, through the legislature, have empowered their public health authorities to do the right thing, to respond. And this is a textbook case of where a new and emergent outbreak, documented nationwide and present also in Montana, requires emergency rulemaking.
The hearing is expected to continue through the week.
Now on to the weather scene with Q2G forecaster Bob McGuire. Bob, the streets will be filled with kids and maybe even umbrellas tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's going to start off as rain showers about noontime tomorrow in the Billings area. Then after that, when temperatures start to cool down, it becomes something else. Of course, it's time for our Halloween forecast, and let me show you. We had a little fun with the computer today. Here's what's going to be in Billings. 37 degrees at about 6 o'clock with about a 40% chance of that rain changing over to snowfall. Meanwhile, over in Livingston, it's going to be 34 degrees with about a 20% chance for some snow showers. And one more stop. Let's go over to Miles City. 34 degrees, and you'll notice it's about a 60% chance for snow showers as our green monster looks more like Michael Jackson, I think. Anyway, we'll have the rest of your forecast coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Now, if you'd like to take a road trip to Old Faithful or Steamboat Geyser this weekend is your last chance this fall. Come Monday morning, the only gates open will be the North Gate at Gardner and the Northeast Gate at Cook City and Silvergate. The park is scheduled to reopen for over-snow vehicles on Sunday, December 15th. The winter season runs through March 15th. If you do plan to visit the park these last few days, park officials say be flexible with your plans as weather may cause temporary travel restrictions or even road closures.
More than 6,000 firefighters continue to battle the wildfires out in California, but officials do believe they are starting to gain the upper hand on those flames.
Michelle Medina reports.
Gusting winds caused the fires in California to multiply on Wednesday. Major wildfires continue to burn across the state, propelled by strong windstorms.
Mother Nature is relentless in this situation when it comes to the winds. So the best thing we can do is get the people out of the way.
The flames came within 100 feet of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. The complex was evacuated along with about 7,000 homes in the area. Residents used garden hoses in an effort to keep flames at bay.
If everyone comes out of this fire safe and sound, then I'll be a happy camper.
As the day progressed, firefighters began to see that the weather might be changing in their favor.
The wind is favorable. It is blowing in the areas where we still have open line. It's blowing the fire back into itself. The acreage will increase through the night and into tomorrow, but that one is not running with the wind any longer.
Officials caution that while the wind may die down, conditions are likely to remain very dry in northern and southern California, meaning the fire threat is far from over. Nichelle Medina, CBS News, Simi Valley.
Now, the wildfires have burned more than 100,000 acres and have destroyed more than 200 homes.
But so far, there have been no reports of any deaths or serious injuries.
Well, coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, Senator Tester broadcasting his complaints over how media reaches certain parts of Montana. We'll hear from him.
Plus, from goblins to ghouls to superheroes, all sorts of creatures will be wandering your streets. Check out what to expect.
And later in sports, we're in for a giant championship soccer weekend after Skyview's wild finish tonight. Scott sets it up.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.